As we continue our discussion of polynomial functions, we're now going to introduce the idea of multiplicity. If the same factor x minus r occurs more than once in a given polynomial f, r is called a multiple or repeated zero of f. For example, if we have a polynomial function, f of x equals x minus 1 squared times x plus 2 cubed, we can see that the factor x minus 1 is squared, so we can say that it occurs twice in this polynomial function. And then x plus 2, that factor is cubed, so we can say it occurs 3 times in this polynomial function. So that means the corresponding 0, if x minus 1 is a factor, then we know 1 must be a 0 of the function. So we can say that 1 is a repeated 0, and we can say that if x plus 2 is a factor, we know that negative 2 must be a 0, and we can say that negative 2 is also a repeated 0. Now, the number of times that the factor x minus r occurs in the polynomial function, or in other words, the exponent on the factor, is called the multiplicity. It's called the multiplicity of the 0 r. So in this example, if r is a repeated, 1 is a repeated 0, the exponent on the factor x minus 1 is 2. So that means that 1 is a 0 of multiplicity 2, because the exponent on the factor x minus 1 is 2, or x minus 1 occurs twice in that polynomial. And then we can say that negative 2 is a 0 of multiplicity 3, because we can see that the exponent on the factor x plus 2 is 3. In other words, x plus 2 occurs as a factor 3 times. Multiplicity has implications for the graphs of polynomial functions. If r is a 0 of even multiplicity, so such as here, x minus 1 squared, the 2 is even number, that means that the graph is going to touch the x-axis, but not actually cross through at that 0. And if r is a 0 of odd multiplicity, the graph will actually cross, and this should be touches. If r is a 0 of odd multiplicity, the graph crosses the x-axis at r. So that means, in this example, this graph will cross the x-axis because of this odd multiplicity at negative 2. So our graph would look something like this, if you want to just make a little sketch. So we have our zeros of negative 2 and 1. So we know that at negative 2, we're going to cross through, but at 1, we're just going to touch and go back up. And we'll talk shortly here about how we know that snake shape is the exact shape that it is. But for here, if you want to just label, so here's 1, 0, and here's negative 2, 0, and you can see that here it crosses, and here at 1 it touches.